When it comes to self-expression, YouTube offers an excellent platform for cultivating a dedicated audience. It offers many different methods of sharing one creative output and creating a following based on their vision. Some fortunate creators have even achieved their dreams and found financial freedom solely through posting videos. However, just like a double-edged sword, the fame also came with some challenges: accusation of deception, manipulation, lying, and even a little bit of backstabbing. All of it combining into one video that not only destroyed her YouTube career, but also had so much of a rippling effect that it forever changed the landscape of the anime community known today, opening the door for YouTubers to add their own political takes into anime. So take a seat and relax, because today we're going to be delving into the untold story of the Pedantic Romantic, a captivating individual who had captured the hearts of the anime community for her insightful and trend-defining videos, especially when it comes to gender-specific topics, to see how one single anime destroyed her future as an anime influencer and polluted the way people talk about anime going forward. Whether you consider it a curse or a blessing, thanks to the anonymity that the internet provides, a lot of information is kept a secret, so unless a person behind the screen wishes for it, you would most likely never figure out who they are, which is why there's not much information about the Pedantic Romantic. But aside from any personal information, the thing that I could say is, the Pedantic Romantic made their channel on June 24, 2016, making her debut in what I would like to call the second generation of anime content creators, growing their following alongside Scamboli and Surprise Patch Wolf, two content creators that also came up around the same time period, making her debut 2 days later with her video Kiss Knifer is the Ultimate Melodrama, and a few weeks later reaching the 100 subscriber milestone, as well as making her first Twitter account. Miss Stills was able to attract an audience as she was, well, quite talented when it came to expressing her viewpoints in her videos. Filled with an impressive vocabulary, yet simple enough that it wasn't too complicated to follow, the videos were rough around the edges but in a very charming way. And because analytical content was not as saturated as it is now, she was able to go viral. Her first video bumping her up to 1,000 followers was a quick 8-minute video going over the subtle character nuances. She would quickly get an audience of over 5,000 subscribers in her first year, mainly due to the momentum that this creator had garnered from posting weekly. And she was the only creator exploring the sexuality of an animated character through a trans person perspective. At this point in time in her career, Miss Stills wasn't regarded as a controversial figure that she is known for today. There were some signs of her manipulative and arrogant nature as early as 2017. Most of them could have been found on her Twitter, but after so many controversies and drama, Lachlan deleted most of her early Twitter history. So not much is known about her early years of her Twitter escapades, but going off of screenshots, I have to say not much has changed in her Twitter posting. Even today, she's still consistently on Twitter, either tweeting or retweeting mostly political topics. You know, once Twitter rots her brain, it gets it's over. And at this point in her career, Miss Stills was quite popular. She opened up a Patreon, collaborated with other content creators, and even started appearing in many podcasts. Most notably starting her own podcast called The Pedantic Romantic's Mantic Antics. Wow, what a mouthful. Having lasted 18 episodes before inevitably going defunct. If you were just a fan who viewed her content on YouTube, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She did considerably improve her audio and editing skills. So then, how do you ruin a promising career in what many consider a dream job? Well, if you're Lachlan, you would take weeks between uploads, or you would either spend most of your time on Twitter arguing with people who clearly don't care. No, seriously, it shouldn't take you almost a month to upload a 10 to 15 minute video, especially if you're almost making $1,000 on Patreon. On October 25th, 2018, a monumental moment in Miss Lachlan's career happened. She was able to surpass her original goal of $400 in order to become a full-time YouTuber. This achievement was also one of her catalysts for her inevitable fall from grace. Her Patreon is now down, but luckily for us, someone took a screenshot of her Patreon with the following message.
I've made the safe but perhaps foolish decision to pursue a college education. Throughout my life, my grades have been the only thing that could be called top tier. But now I've added videos to that shortlist, and those are a hell of a lot more personally satisfying and rewarding. This semester, I'm officially taking a leave of absence, looking to see how much of an audience and patron base I can build up in an attempt to determine how viable this can be. I am slated to return to classes this spring, but hopefully with your support, I can make enough money off of this to say, no dad, I should totally drop out of college to post videos about anime to the internet. There's no way I can stop making these things now. I'm addicted, but with your help, I can make them bigger, better, and faster.
Something, if you ask me, is pretty stupid to say the least. Listen kids, if you don't want to start an OnlyFans, stay in school. You know what, never mind, in this economy, a college book is like $2 grand, so good luck. At this point in her career, it was common for her to make lukewarm videos, get into some petty drama, and pretend like nothing happened. Very same October, Miss Stills even allowed her political views to come in between her friendship with another YouTuber known as Jack UTA, better known for his YouTube channel, Under the Scope, another anime-inspired channel that focuses on everything and everything surrounding the topic of anime, from its creation to its consumption. Whether they made up and remained friends is not known, since again, these creators' lives are quite private, and aside from a vague tweet and a non-follow there, nothing else can be inferred. Having political opinions is fine, but you can see how having militant political views were starting to have an impact in her relationship with other content creators, as well as in her content. On Sunday, June 28, 1914, Franz Ferdinand was assassinated on his way to a hospital by a Serbian nationalist, sparking the First World War. And just how political tension brought the death of Franz Ferdinand, one bad video sparked the downfall of the Pedantic Romantic's channel. On October 7, 2018, a controversial anime aired that had the anime community in an uproar. Goblin Slayer is about an adventurous party that goes to multiple locations to slay goblins, like the title implies. The controversy would arise from the first episode, where they would depict the bile act on a female party member by a goblin. Nothing out of the ordinary in a dark fantasy, but some viewers were not familiar with the genre and did not expect it to have such scenes depicted. Most anime fans just viewed it as another method of fleshing out the world and the goblins, and this divide would somehow become political. You know, as everything eventually becomes. Some talking points were that if you enjoy Goblin Slayer, then you were a horrible individual, a no bueno person. If you were involved in the anime community at the time, this drama became almost inescapable. You had dozens of Reddit pages either supporting Goblin Slayer or equally amounts claiming that anyone who enjoyed it was fetishizing it. That some big channels that have nothing to do with anime even began involving themselves in the discussion. You had Moist Critical, Wisecrack, and Shadowversary throwing their 2 cents into the mix, making some decent points that at the time and even 6 years later, their videos were viewed favorably, since they were just making the typical anime review while addressing the controversial nature, not involving themselves in pointless political discussion when it's not needed. Because your audience wants to know what will happen in the story and whether it will be good or not. They don't care if the goblins are fascist or not, they're here to hear you be entertaining. Something that a couple larger creators forgot when they decided to weigh in and make a video addressing the controversial nature surrounding Goblin Slayer, with the first one being the one and only the Pedantic Romantic. If she would have made a video just going over the first episode of the Goblin Slayer, I wouldn't be here. I would have most likely done a video about a man that married a serial killer clown, but instead we have the Pedantic Romantic insinuating that Jewish people are goblins.
Goblins themselves have a long history as a Jewish caricature, being hook-nosed creatures who hole up in their caves hoarding wealth.
I don't know what Nuxtackle did to you, but calling all Jewish people goblins is going a bit far, don't you think? And this is just one of her unhinged rants while trying to make Goblin Slayer look worse than it already was. Very manipulative, if you ask me. The Pedantic Romantic does bring up some interesting points in the video, but the problem with agreeing with some of her viewpoints is that most, if not all of them, are half-truth, like you're about to see right now.
Surely you're familiar with one of the most constant and convincing critiques of that series. Heck, even many fans of the show will admit that Reki Kawahara's continual and gratuitous is an issue. And the main issue with it is that Kawahara seems entirely unable to come up with ways to get you to hate a primary antagonist except by making them a racist. It's the quickest way to create a villain out of a character. And hey, that may result in a lazy, dull, unnuanced, and cliched villain, but it'll get you one nonetheless. If you agree with that critique of SAO, and you should because it's a correct one, and you still think Goblin Slayer is good, you're a hypocrite, because that is the literal premise of this series. Let's explain.
Yes, she's kinda right. That is the easiest way of making anyone a villain, but the point is made almost immediately redundant when she starts comparing it to the Goblin Slayer. Because that's not the point of the anime. If she would have waited more than half a day after the anime aired, you would have gotten that context. Because the show's not interested in trying to elicit a question about morality. It's clearly stated that goblins are bad, they're evil, they're made by a dark god because they enjoy messing with humanity. Also, framing the reason why people hate SAO is because the rap scene is entirely disingenuous. Digibro made his entire career pointing out all the flaws that it has. Come on, you should know this. Because you made an hour-long video going over how Digibro ruined Sword Art's online perception here in the West.
But oh-ho, you may be saying. What about the intriguing moral quandary at play? The series certainly explores the moral implications of a race that is inherently evil, ending its first episode with our prospective character wincing over Mr. Slayer murdering goblin babies. But that whole philosophical question is fucking stupid. The series makes this out as if it's supposed to even approach being an interesting concept, a study in when killing is justified, of a utilitarian greater good scenario.
It's kind of a nature versus nurture thing where you're either the way you are because that's just how you are, or your situations, your past, your history has developed you into the way you are, which can either make you good or evil or just completely neutral, I suppose, as well. And that's kind of like the heart of the idea behind this show that I don't feel we've really gotten to that yet, so I can't really blame for not knowing all that. It takes more than the first episode to create like a good opinion on this, or a good understanding of like where it's going, of course. But yeah, that point's not quite true. It's not true at all.
Of course you kill them off. They are inherently evil beings. What debate could possibly be had over this situation? Are you a fucking pro-lifer? All goblin life is sacred. Otherwise, I don't see what points could possibly be argued here.
Oh hey there, politics buddy, old pal, old friend, amigo Tomodachi. I was wondering when you would make a pointless appearance in the video about goblins. If you base your entire brand around discussing politics, that's fine. But when you pivot your content to add politics, it will always alienate a large portion of your audience. Not everyone wants to know if Trump and Biden visited Epstein's island. People just want to know if the anime about the half-naked schoolgirls fighting aliens' clothes are good or not.
And let's now get to those racial elements, shall we? It's somewhat telling that the characterization the series ended up using to create villains of the goblins is basically a hodgepodge of all sorts of racist propaganda from throughout the centuries. There's of course the obvious, those foreigners are coming to rape your white daughters, but it goes deeper than that. As a race, goblins are weak creatures, but they are tricky and conniving and just breed so dang quickly. That's how they manage to remain a threat. This is exactly how white supremacists explain the other races causing issues for white people when they are supposedly the superior race. Goblins themselves have a long history as a Jewish caricature, being hook-nosed creatures who hole up in their caves hoarding wealth.
Now, I don't know what the Pedantic Romantic was thinking jumping to such an extreme method of categorizing Jewish people, but that has nothing to do with Goblin Slayer. The fact that she was trying to equate being tricking and conniving for a certain race is, how should I put this, bizarre? None of the traits that she laid out before us can be exclusively given out to a certain race. I can't remember the last time I went to a rally where they were like, you see those Hispanic over there? And they're weak, I tell you. YouTube, this is an example. Please, don't make me disappear. They usually have other choice words, so, I'm just filling in. That being called a nerd. I wish to go on record and say I love my Jewish brethren. Let's stand against Jewish hate. Please, don't treat me like Kanye. I wish to eventually buy Yeezys too. Better yet, don't treat me like Fresh and Fit. I can't afford to be demonetized before I'm even monetized.
Fresh Fit demonetized on Twitter. yeah, saw that one?
I saw that.
I feel like every time...
Again!
Yes. Myron get banned on Twitch?
Again! You idiot!
And there's the point in episode 1 where Mr. Slayer literally says, "The only good goblin is one that never crawls out of its hole." That whole phrase structure happens to come from, "The only good Indian is a dead Indian," which, as far as we know, was its initial use. Now, calm the down this instant and listen carefully. Am I saying that the author is racist? No. Am I saying the series is racist? No. Although the fact that Goblin Slayer isn't racist doesn't seem to stop some idiot LARPers from using it to play out their fantasies of racial genocide.
Lost in Translation is a 2003 movie about an Asian movie star who's in Japan to film a whiskey commercial. But in his stay in Japan, he forms a unique bond with a newly married woman named Charlotte. And it manages to be a funny and sad story about what it could have been if we met first. One of Bill Murray's best movie. And what does this have to do with Goblin Slayer? Well, nothing aside from the joke that it takes place in Japan and the title leading into my next point that all of this was just a non sequitur. Just like the next point in her argument, last time I checked, Japanese does not translate one-to-one to English. Some things will inevitably get lost in translation. So to argue that this Japanese author went out of his way to study US history so he could then put it in his story seems extremely far-fetched if you ask me.
If I see you whining in the comments about the SJW upset over non-existent racism, I will personally come to your house and chop your dick off.
Ha! My first wife beat you to it.
I'm not saying it's racist, I'm saying that it's f***ing lazy. If your characterization of your villains is literally as flat and unnuanced as fucking racist propaganda, then I'm sorry to say that you have written a piece of shit story.
But addressing the Goblin allegation, the Pedantic knows it's not racist yet a few seconds ago claimed that the depiction of goblins were Jewish stereotypes, which makes this entire point mute. Then what was the purpose of the last 3 minutes? This video was poorly constructed from the beginning. There was only one episode out at the time, so unless you either read the light novel or the manga, which the Pedantic did, you wouldn't get most of the themes that the anime was trying to explore. But because the Pedantic Romantic did read the light novels and the manga, it came across as she's trying to spread a certain narrative. If you don't believe me that this is manipulative and an insult to the viewer, then listen to me, I have some real estate to sell you on the moon.
And at the end here, let me say that edgy is a stupid criticism, a really stupid one. Why then did I call you an edgelord if you like this series? Because I guarantee that huge portions of Goblin Slayers' fans have said Tokyo Ghoul is trash because it's so edgy, or laughed at Magical Girl Sight a few seasons back for being so edgy, or have made fun of Linkin Park Naruto AMVs for being so edgy. If you ever use edgy as a criticism, if you, unlike me, buy into that as a critique that holds any validity whatsoever, and yet don't apply that label of edgy to this series, then you're even more proof of why edgy is such a vapid, meaningless term to describe something. This is a series whose premise is a dude who watched his family get raped and murdered, going around to wipe out a race of inherently evil, savage rapists. The concept of a species that has to rape other intelligent life in order to survive is the most Shadow the Hedgehog bullshit of all time.
Calling something edgy just comes off as lazy criticism, especially since the Pedantic Romantic refuses to elaborate on what's considered edgy. Sure, there's no denying he's got them scared just comes off as edgy, especially in the first episode. But you could say the same thing about Berserk's first chapter. The story begins with him clapping demon chicks and saving a naked fairy boy. If it wasn't for the fact that Berserk came out a long time ago, and not today, people would be making the same argument, calling it edgy or something. At this point, edgy is just a buzzword that shuts down any conversation. Because how are you supposed to argue against anyone who uses edgy as a defense? Hey look, they have Vosh's favorite character.
I've seen some people try to explain or excuse this by saying, well, it's a dark, gritty fantasy. But last I checked, dumb bullshit wasn't a necessary genre element of that. I'm sorry, but if the only way you can think of for something to be dark is overblown and unrealistic, then you are sorely lacking in creativity. Dark is contemplating hurting yourself because you feel worthless and feel like doing that might make you less so. Goblin Slayer isn't dark, it's child's play. The conception of what darkness is by a 13-year-old who's been lucky enough to never encounter real darkness in their own life. Something so overblown that it could only speak to reality in the most vague of ways isn't dark. This series doesn't touch upon any heavy truth, any frightening reality of human nature or existence. You want dark? Go watch Rakugo Shinju. Go watch, spoilers,
Just like edgy, dark is a very subjective term, because what I would find dark, you would most likely not find dark. I personally find the ship scene for Japan 6 traumatizingly dark, since it leaves a lot to the imagination, which is funny because like only 8 people have seen the show and even less than that think it's dark.
I've offered up my reasons for why Goblin Slayer is bad, but hey, maybe you don't agree that SAO handles its villains poorly. More power to you. I decided to make this video because my dismissal of Goblin Slayer in my seasonal overview video got some pushback, and so I thought it would be good to lay out my feelings on the matter in an organized fashion. The Shadow the Hedgehog theme is unironically don't at me. Do you remember me? Capture you and set you free. I am all that I am, all I am.
I understand why you would add Sword Art Online to the discussion. It's an easy way of comparing the two shows, but it's still somewhat redundant, since the problems presented in Sword Art Online are completely different than in Goblin Slayer. Both shows have their problem, and both shows have their controversial materials, but they're not interchangeable. The show is a mess, and sometimes some things could have been animated and framed differently, but the way that the Pedantic Romantic was approaching it was very disingenuous from the beginning. misinterpreting points and making a clickbaity title. It felt like a slap to the face. She was trying to force her own limited worldviews onto the viewers, and it showed. From the beginning, this was never a conversation. She never wanted any feedback, because when the video was published, the comments were turned off. And if you ask me, the worst part about this video, the thing that I truly find irredeemable, unforgiving, is that bad singing at the end. Come on, Miss Romantic, put some pep into those steps. Have more energy. I do agree the song is a certified banger, but right now you're making me want to lose my hearing. It will forever baffle me that people will come out with bad videos that are clearly made for engagement baiting, but because they have never been involved in massive controversies or lack the ability to capitalize on the massive amount of attention that comes from it, they eventually just end up buckling from the pressure, just like, I forgot his name, Future Me, please put this on the screen. And then you have another creator that sees all the hate that the Pedantic is receiving and thinks to themselves, you know what, I kinda want some of that. And some of that is what Mother's Basement received, after he made an even worse video responding to the Goblin Slayer backlash. And I would love to go over this, but this video is already long enough, so another time maybe. But here are the cliff notes. Goblin Slayer is bad, being edgy is bad, you wouldn't stick your dick inside of a box of puppies, and anyone who likes Goblin Slayer gets off to a certain type of hentai. That begins with an R, and no, not a rim job. The Pedantic Romantic did end up eventually deleting her video and replacing it with her "Why My Goblin Slayer" video was wrong. The title implies it was some kind of apology for her other video, but if you watch it, that's not the case. Instead of taking some time and reflecting on the misinformation that she was spreading, she instead doubled down, completely missing the entire reason why people were criticizing her in the first place. Okay, the video starts with her seemingly acknowledging her mistake, but it would quickly become evident that the Pedantic Romantic learned absolutely nothing.
I'd had a time where I was uploading weekly, a chunk of 3 months where I stuck to that schedule, and once again, that grind, that need to have new stuff regularly on a fairly quick schedule, meant I ended up putting out a number of subpar, poorly considered videos.
I just want to say, that's still not an excuse, because we're not researching the cure for cancer, we're discussing animated works. This is clearly the Pedantic Romantic shifting the blame onto time constraint rather than her taking the time to do a decent job. Remember, at the time, she was not working or in college. She took some time off in order to become a full-time YouTuber. With her Patreon, they gave her $900 a month monthly. Her blaming on her trying to push out a video daily had nothing to do with why that video came out so poorly constructed. This is another blatant lie.
In recent months, I'd broken away from that, making less frequent videos that each had a lot more work to them and often had a lot more research to them. I made a higher quality of stuff than I could possibly make in 2 days. And yet, over the course of those months, I'd slipped into algorithmic irrelevancy. Those videos would only be viewed by small portions of my sub count. And of course, that was the whole impetus for Bring Back the Romance in the first place, a time to start being forced to experiment and see what would work.
The reason why the Pedantic Romantic actually fell out of YouTube's good graces was not because she was not uploading daily. It was because the stuff that she was uploading was low effort. At some point in her YouTube journey, she started to plateau. Her videos haven't improved editing-wise in a long time. There were even audio issues where she switched from camera mic to a computer mic. This is horrendous. This is a mistake a beginner YouTube would make.
Especially when the competition there is so high, and the other members of that platform have had a longer time perfecting their craft. Has to be frightening. And I know it's not an easy transition, but there's an individual who not only moved to another form of entertainment, but has sacrificed his YouTube channel in order to do so. And I just want to talk about the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, Cerulean, a small YouTuber with zero experience. God, I hate you. Not someone who has been making YouTube videos for almost half a decade. A large majority of her thumbnails look boring and uninspiring. Why would I click on this? This is YouTube 101. As creators, we have to make our content appealing from the get-go. Sure, it hurts that a video that you pour your heart and soul into it only got 4,000 views and it didn't go viral. But somewhere down the line, you made the mistake, and that's okay, it's only natural. Maybe the first 30 seconds wasn't entertaining enough, or the thumbnail was too bland and generic, but at the end of the day, the fault lies with us. It's our jobs as content creators to make whatever demented thought that popped into our heads into something other people can see and enjoy. Sure, YouTube's algorithm sucks and now it favors short form content, but YouTube can't be blamed for everything. You have to change with the times and evolve.
But I can promise you that while I'll certainly have future missteps, because I'm certainly not perfect, I'm certainly gonna avoid another misstep like that Goblin Slayer video to the best of my ability.
The Pedantic Romantic learned absolutely nothing. If you go to her channel, you would see that after the Goblin Slayer debacle, she made 5 more controversial videos within the span of 2 months, with one of them sparking another massive discussion in the YouTube space, that it even affected another website.
To be clear, that video didn't hurt me in any meaningful sense. It's my most successful video in months, dislikes don't affect the channel as a whole or your other videos. I got a number of new patrons after that video dropped. I did get a bunch of unsubs, but that's what happens after any period where most of your subscribers weren't seeing your work and they start seeing it again.
It's kinda ironic that a channel its entire point is to break down and analyze the subtle nuances of animated work couldn't see how the underlying damage that one video truly did. Algorithmically wise, it did wonderful. 80,000 views and more Patreon is nothing to scoff at. Where the damage truly lies was in perception. The regular anime fans that were watching that video felt insulted and left. And the new audience that came had little interest in anime, they just wanted more drama. Something that content creators forget is that YouTube is a community-driven platform. So if you belittle your audience, then you will end up like Bad Bunny. And no, not the Puerto Rican rapper.
How that results in 0 subs. There are regulars here. $5 a month. How do you have hours of time to watch me and not $5? I don't know. What are you doing with your life where you have hours of time to watch Twitch and not $5 to provide for the content that you're watching?
She was a growing content creator turned OnlyFans model after she insulted her audience. And if you think I'm maybe cherry picking some arguments or not showing the full context, then if you want, go watch the full video yourself, the link will be in the description. Something that not many people know is when you're the first one to making a video on something, you set the tone of the conversation going forward. And that's something that Pedantic Romantic could not foresee when she was the first creator to release the Goblin Slayer video. She set the tone of the conversation in a very disingenuous way. A lot of YouTubers are lazy and don't want to do the work, so they just see whatever video is trending, add a little bit of detail, and copy it. If you've seen one commentary video, then you've seen them all. Not mentioning any name, but I made a video on this exact topic in my secondary channel, the link will be in the description. And it was clearly evident in the way that TB Skyen made his video. It copied a lot of the Pedantic Romantic's talking point, but somehow it took the same talking points and made them worse. Apparently the video was so criticized to the point that he had to private the video. The only evidence of it existing were on another content creator's video and a rather lengthy post on Reddit, going over some of the issues that the viewers had with it. Instead of apologizing and focusing on how to make her videos better, she would spend a majority of her time on Twitter doing damage control, blaming it on YouTube's algorithm for promoting hateful videos instead of her content, saying the fact that she had to upload weekly content was a reason why quality was lackluster, blaming the poor reception of her first Goblin Slayer video on her Goblin Slayer rabid fanbase. Side note, the anime at the time only had like 1 episode airing, which is really funny to think about, because it would mean that that 1 episode was so amazing that it garnered a ravenous fanbase, contradicting everything that she said up until now. I don't believe what she stated was the reason for her downfall, because at the same time as the Pedantic Romantic was uploading her last video, a new YouTuber that was also posting weekly anime content exploded onto the scene. But his rise is for another video and another time. And at this point in Miss Laughlin's career, she learned to stay away from controversial topics and focus on making more higher quality anime content, and eventually disappearing into irrelevancy. Nah, I'm just kidding. She swan dive into another controversy. She learned absolutely nothing. On September 1st, 1938, Germany invaded Poland, forever altering the course of history and sparking the largest conflict known to mankind, also known as World War II. And just how political ideals led to extremist ideology, the Pedantic Romantic's personality led her to ostracization from the larger anime community. Not even a full month after promising to stay out of controversy and focusing on making better content, the Pedantic Romantic turned on Twitter and got involved into another one. I guess whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger? If you are or were an anime fan, you would have eventually come across this topic. Are traps gay? This discourse has been going on for decades, since the inception of 4chan, and unfortunately with anime becoming more and more politicized, the silly and wacky way of describing a certain character in anime has become quite a minefield to traverse. If my memory serves me well, it was around 4 years ago when r/anime memes decided to ban the word trap when referring to a character that are femboys, trans, and or girlish looking boys. Any user caught using said quote-unquote slur would end up receiving a ban as well. The subreddit would end up forcibly shutting down for an entire month due to the multi-month long crusade against the subreddit mods. Unfortunately, many of the users went from lurkers to actively fighting the good fight. I was even there in the midst of things. There was a thoughtful bikini pics flying left and right, pixelated meat flying over the horizon. There were so many codes on the screen I felt like Alex Mason. Aside from the PTSD I get when someone posts a can of Monster, and my search history having more numbers in it than the numerical value of pi, the fallout from the ensuing Discord just had the refugees migrating to another anime-related subreddit, today known as Good Anime Memes, which is just the exact same thing except you could use the word trap. Well, if you weren't terminally online, you would have missed the entire discourse, since only a few creators made videos on it and even fewer made videos exploring whether or not the character dressed as a woman actually identified as one. And a few of the creators that predated this movement was Mirai, Blair White, Condancula, and Misinformation. While all these creators did take a more comedic approach to answering the question, the only one who added a little bit more nuance was Blair White, with her video on Are Traps Gay? And I know Blair White is a controversial figure, but whatever your feelings on Blair White might be, she was one of the first few creators who actually took the time to actually delve into the distinction might have from real individuals. While this discourse has been going on for years, it didn't ripple through multiple communities until the Pedantic released her video on it. I cannot underestimate the popularity that the Pedantic Romantic had at the time. While yes, she was a controversial figure and she was losing popularity rather quickly, she was still the largest LGBT influencer when it came to anime. That the subreddit r/trans used her video as evidence for banning the word. That subreddit eventually died and became archived, so you can still take a look at that Discord that went on. Well, on November 26, 2018, the Pedantic Romantic would once again get involved into another controversy when she uploaded her videos Traps Don't Exist and Here's Why, where she defended her points using some interesting argument that I personally could never come up with, such as calling a trans person a trap is the same as calling a black person monkey or the N-word.
More importantly though, its use as a slur is incredibly pervasive. In the exact same way that a black person being dogpiled will have monkey and the N-word thrown at them, or a gay person will have thrown at them, trans people will have people calling them trap, along with all the others.
She didn't specify which use of the N-word, either the one with the hard ER at the end or the one with the hard A at the end. But to give benefit of doubt, let's go with A in this discussion. I mean, let's ask a black trans person which slur would they prefer being called, and I imagine being called a trap will be the least of the worry. I did leave a link in the description if you want to watch the video yourself and come to a conclusion on your own. But for the sake of brevity, I'll just condense her main talking points. Now, the first point that she mentioned was that traps are slur because David Duke wants the traps are gay. On Twitter, now X. Let me be clear, if you're a shade darker than albino, David Duke will call you the N-word with a hard ER.
It's used to direct that hatred towards an incitement of violence, like the replies to David Duke's trap tweet of people fantasizing about killing trans people. How much clearer do things have to be than the ex-leader of the Ku Klux Klan expressing disgust at a group of people?
His legacy is so infamous that you could have been born yesterday, and just by hearing his name, you would have already known that all his viewpoints are pretty much irrelevant. I feel like this doesn't need to be stated, but I'll still say it. He's an extremist when it comes to right-wing ideals. Regardless what words he would have called you, it would have been an insult. I mean, if he would have been a respectable politician, which by the way there are none, or a beloved celebrity were to use that word negatively, then yeah, there might have been some validity to that claim. But it's David Duke. He's the type of man that would have done a DNA test on his firstborn, and if that paper came out with his son having 99% white DNA and 0.1 African, he would have called his son the N-word while disowning him because he's too black. The other ridiculous statement that the Pedantic Romantic made was saying that anyone who willingly uses the word trap are transphobic. Because at that time it was extremely common that many anime fans called said characters that word, since for the most part it was used as a term of endearment. And it still is, which is kind of funny. Her next argument is that traps is a slur that needs to be reclaimed. And under normal circumstances, trying to change the meaning of an insult into a term of endearment is fine and all, just like the N-word. Except it was never a slur. There wasn't a flood of 4chan users that were using trap as an insult. But could you have imagined it? Look at that trap over there, then with them perfectly feminine legs and childbearing hips. I hate it. Ooh, and a face more beautiful than a model. Boy, I hate it. Johnny, why are you standing up? Get down. If you get too close, it's gonna become a sword fight. No, please! And at this point you can already see that this video was not made to have an open discussion. Whether liking traps are gay, the video came out exactly like her Goblin Slayer video, with the sole purpose of politicizing a popular anime that was airing at the time. But unlike the Goblin Slayer situation where you had fans arguing against the creators that tried putting their own political spin to it, this time it became a free-for-all where creators were making videos trying to answer the decade-old question. Yet after the Pedantic came out with her video, it changed how people were making videos about this topic. There was no longer a light-hearted element to it. Gone was the joking atmosphere. There was now a heated debate going on. You had ContraPoints, the one that shall not be named, and Makore making a nearly hour-long video deep diving into the history of trans women and defending their respective viewpoints. ContraPoints even cited the Pedantic Romantic as her source of information.
Fundamental questions. What are traps? And be they gay? With respect to the former inquiry, I adduce for your consideration a treatise by the lady scholar known as the Pedantic Romantic, wherein the derivation of the word trap is
And then you have creators that responded directly to Miss Laughlin's video, such as The Unknown Otaku and Dimitri Monroe. Oh, and then you have Nux. I'm just mentioning him because this blue PNG is like the plague. He gets involved in every single controversy related to anime. If not, he just makes his own drama, so, there's that. Well, Dimitri responded by making a video called Traps is Not Slur, a history lesson, where he would go over the history of traps and its usage, since many of the videos that were coming out at that time had many biases in the perspective. And as you would expect, the Pedantic Romantic went onto Twitter to yet again try doing some semblance of damage control, but in her attempt to not look foolish, she would look foolish by proving her detractors right. Well, more specifically, she proved Dimitri right when she had to cherry pick videos in order to win a Twitter spat. It's funny to say that she then later privated her account after the spat. Now, I'm not blaming the Pedantic Romantic on what happened next, since we as creators cannot control our viewers' action, but I do have to state that this was technically her fan base defending her, and in their attempt to protect Miss Laughlin, a large-scale harassment campaign was launched onto Dimitri, that it can still be viewed on Reddit, and some of the stuff being said there is, well, oof. Calling it horrifying would be an understatement. There's hating and then there's whatever the hell's going on Reddit. Anime Circle Jerks makes a post about Dimitri every single year. That is next level of dedication. That is 50 Cent's level of hating. The video that Dimitri made in response to the Pedantic Romantic has been taken down, with the reason being even though he views that video fondly, it still has some inaccuracy and wasn't content with it. Dimitri would eventually replace his video with an improved version, but aside from him mentioning the video, all traces were deleted, or just privatized. And who can blame him, especially when Reddit really loves Dimitri. It's even to the point that if his name is mentioned anywhere, there's a swarm of diehard supporters that will let their opinions be known. Funny enough, despite the accusations and the hate from the community, Dimitri and the Pedantic Romantic did remain friends privately. And at this point the cycle would continue. The Pedantic would get onto Twitter, get involved in some kind of political discussion, would deflect and run away if she got too much criticism thrown her way, rinse and repeat, and this would go on for some time, until the inevitable death of her channel. Bleeding subs and losing Patreon, the Pedantic Romantic would upload her last video, It's Dark Souls Baby Hibiki Euphonium, the movie, which was released June 28th, 2019. And the following year, she would delete her Patreon, putting an end to her YouTube journey. The sad decline of the Pedantic Romantic's channel began when she started adding politics into her content. Compared to other anime content creators, she had a much higher output when it came to uploading anime analysis. It's kind of inspirational. She was some kid who woke up one day, bought a mic, decided to make a name for herself here on YouTube. And I know hindsight is 2020, but looking back on things, the Pedantic Romantic could have become something great. She managed to carve a special niche in the anime community, something that not many content creators could achieve. She was the first AniTuber to examine anime through a trans person perspective, gathering friends and loyal subscribers. She was almost able to reach the top if the Pedantic Romantic focused more on improving her skills, actually following through with her Patreon promises and avoiding getting involved in pointless Twitter drama. She could have easily surpassed 500,000 followers, hell, maybe even 1 million, and she could have had a long career here on YouTube, as well as becoming a well-liked and respectable trans icon. Practice what you preach was a great retrospective about the Wandering Sun. If you want to see a great example of this, just take a look at Hazel. She was also a trans creator that makes anime-related content while exploring it through a gender-specific topic, without getting into constant political debates that alienates her respective viewers. I mean, the most concerning thing about this creator is that she consumes a lot of Taco Bell, and from my prior experience, anyone who eats Taco Bell has beef with their future self. I do mean it when I say Twitter is a pointless app that only brings misery to those who even give it a passing glance. If the Pedantic Romantic didn't use her platform so irresponsibly, be it the manipulation of her viewers or the inability to reflect on her mistakes, there might have been a case for her to return. But from the moment she joined that site, her worst tendencies were enabled over and over again, until it destroyed her reputation. And who's to say that she wouldn't fall down the same habits once again? Despite her Patreon and viewers leaving, her personal life was flourishing. Miss Stills was able to find work outside of YouTube and even became engaged to her longtime partner Zaria, eventually marrying her a year later. Many content creators who lose their following on YouTube either overstay their welcome and become locals like Boogie298, or start peddling crypto. But Misto was able to leave somewhat gracefully and build a life outside of content creating, and that's something that not many content creators get. But her story is a stark reminder why keeping politics and your work separate is so important. Because after all these years, what is her legacy? A YouTuber who brought Western politics into anime? A creator who willfully destroyed the reputation of Goblin Slayer because it had dark elements to it? Or was it that willful ignorance in her statement that sent a mob full of hate towards a beloved friend? Well, whatever. I have been God's fair mistake, and I'll see you in a little while. Peace.